Hey everyone, this is Teach MA Dude coming to you with another video. I've been on a streak of videos recently, in part due to our April vacation. Always a good time to relax if you are a teacher. And as we get ready to close out April break, coming to you with a video because we're in hiring season, all about how to look at a job posting for a public school, not charter school, but more of a traditional school, and to really understand and break down what you're looking for and evaluate whether it might be the best job for you. For the purposes of this exercise, I am going to use a real job posting that I found on the site School Spring. I highly recommend if you're looking for a teaching job in Massachusetts or in many other places that you do use the School Spring platform because it does have a good job listing kind of selection, and many people will post their jobs there. I'm sure if you want to go to a specific town, I always do recommend that you look up that town school system. And every school system nowadays has a website, and the website will have like a career opportunities page. Okay, so this is going to be, and I'm going to redact all the information. It's going to be a sample job posting. We're going to walk through it and we're going to see what it looks like. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Okay, everyone. So here we go. We're looking at a high school math teacher 2023-2024 school year. It's at some traditional public school, not a charter. It's in some district in Massachusetts. This was actually, again, a real public high school in Massachusetts. I did, again, as you can see, I deleted anything specific, so you will not see who it was specifically talking about. So first thing we want to do is we want to note the job details, posted and starting date. You will want to see if there is a repost date. Sometimes on School Spring, you'll see that there. The starting date is important. You do want to see when you're starting. Charter schools will tend to start earlier in August. This one is saying August 22nd, and that's probably because there is a teacher orientation. Usually you're required as a new teacher to go to an orientation program. Many school districts will list the 28th or the 29th, which is probably the first day that the teachers are supposed to report. But this district is giving you a sense that probably that's when you're going to report for kind of some orientation. And what that's suggesting to me is that the orientation program is looking like it might be as long as about a week. All right, because August 22nd is a Tuesday, so it's about a few days long. All right, so for what it's worth, just want to take that into consideration. Now, most job descriptions are going to be a lot of the same stuff, so you do want to take them with a grain of salt. Depending on the district you're applying to, a lot of it will just reiterate the Massachusetts teacher rubric and kind of just go back to that. So as you see here, you'll typically see qualifications, and more or less what it's telling you is that you need to have a license and highly qualified requirements. And, that is, I'd recommend you look that up. In this case, if you have a bachelor's degree in math, that would count as highly qualified. And it's just saying you need a license, either a 5 through 8 Massachusetts math license or a 9 through 12. That is not very surprising. Any public school job is going to ask you to have a license, so that's not a shock. And obviously, they want to see some prior successful classroom work experience as a math teacher at the middle/secondary level. Now, the responsibilities. Now, my take on the responsibilities, it is important to read them through. I imagine that if you are going to pursue this job and you are going to go to an interview, you are going to be asked questions likely based on the responsibilities. You want to look through this for any red flags. So let's look through this. We have knowledge and ability to implement the Massachusetts mathematics curriculum standards. So the idea, do you have the knowledge and the ability to teach the curriculum and the standards? The standards are set throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and then the curriculum kind of addresses those standards. Can you design an effective and rigorous standards-based units of instruction consisting of well-structured lessons with measurable outcomes? That's aligned to the teacher rubric. And, a question that you might be asked in an interview is, talk to me about how you go about planning a unit or planning a lesson. Implementing lessons with appropriate student engagement strategies, pacing, sequence, activities, materials. So again, how do you go through setting up a lesson? Are you able to do that? Are you able to design things like, implement technology and things that are going to engage the students? Are using instructional practices that reflect high expectations regarding content and quality of effort and work? So again, is what you're doing reflecting that you have high expectations for the students? Again, that's kind of tied in to the rubric. Tiered instruction scaffolds differentiates instruction. That's kind of a hot interview question, talking about how you differentiate. And as you can see, they're looking at diverse learning styles, needs, interests, and levels of readiness. So what they're looking for, that indicates to me, is, are you able to differentiate instruction with students who might need different kinds of tools to access the curriculum? So for example, do you offer access to technology, or do you offer access to manipulatives like algebra tiles? This is math, so things like algebra tiles, whiteboards, things like that, so students can have multiple ways of demonstrating their knowledge. But also, do you create activities that, to this idea of levels of readiness, meet learners at different levels of preparedness for the lesson and address those needs? Participates in the selection and requisition of books, instructional aids, instructional supplies, monitors inventory. To me, that just means, are you keeping track of the resources that are allotted to you? And are you making sure that you're keeping a finger on that? Not really a big deal. Use a variety of informal and formal methods of assessment to measure student learning, growth, understanding. Again, that's a very common Massachusetts teacher rubric item. Are you assessing the kids regularly? Are you doing kind of like, they'll talk to you about, that's a very hot interview question. How do you assess whether students are learning and where they're at? Are you doing things like warm-ups? Are you, do you give homework? How do you use that? What do your tests look like? Do you do quizzes? How often, etc.? And then, are you analyzing data from the assessments and draws conclusions that improve student learning? Feedback on how students can improve their performance. Again, that's coming right from the Massachusetts teacher rubric. Are you evaluating student progress in math using school-wide rubrics? So this is an indication right here. This is good to look at. There appears to be, and again, I don't know this, but based on this, some kind of system throughout the school where either everyone's scoring based on the same numbering or lettering system, or there's common things that are being looked for in student work, and everyone's asked to use the same measurement for analyzing that work. It could be a sign that with some of your grading, you're not going to quite have as much autonomy, but, I would make note of that. I would think about, being asked, do you have any experience with this as a teacher? But that might be a question that you're going to want to ask when they give you an opportunity to ask questions. All right. Maintains appropriate standards of behavior, mutual respect and safety, collaborative learning environment. That's pretty traditional. Standard 2, I would call it, maintaining safe learning environment. Are you, managing behavior? I mean, that's a pretty no-brainer right there. Maintain an environment where the backgrounds, identity, strengths, and challenges are respected. Again, that's literally part of the teacher rubric. Collaborates and engages with families. Again, that is part of the teacher rubric. Are you talking to families? That's a very common interview question. How do you collaborate with families? And you're going to want to think about supporting student learning and development both at home and at school. Again, a lot of this straight out of the rubric. You're going to want to think about, what do you do to communicate with families proactively and reactively? So in an interview, you probably don't want to focus only on how you call when a kid misbehaves. Are you sending out frequent email communications to let parents know what's going on? And talk about, what are they doing at home? So the parents, I don't think you have to say, parents, you need to do this at home. Even just to saying, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what students are going to be given for homework. That to me is a good sign that you're including the parents, but you're also giving them kind of like a nudge, like, hey, this is what they're doing at home. So if you want to know what homework they should be doing at home, this is it. Demonstrates the ability to reflect on own practice. So reflective practice is part of the teacher rubric. Informal means as well of collaborating with staff. So collaborating with staff, gather information, analyze data, examine issues, meaningful goals. It's all part of sharing conclusions with colleagues, and reflective practice and professional collaboration. Again, all part of the teacher rubric. Maintaining professional competence through in-service days. That means professional development days. collaborates and shares responsibility with colleagues to implement goals and initiative of the school and district, including examining student work, analyzing performance, and planning appropriate interventions. In other words, there's probably some kind of regular staff meetings. That's pretty typical with any teaching job. Supervises students in out of classroom activities during the assigned work day. Not exactly sure what that means, but likely to me, some kind of activities that maybe it's like assemblies, maybe it's like a service day. That's something you'd want to look into, and meets professional obligations with respect to punctuality, attendance, and routine duties. So are you coming to work on time? Are you coming to work, regularly? And are you doing some kind of, typically they'll have like an administrative duty, hall duty, so watching a hall, bathroom duty, making sure people are, have their passes. There's all kinds of duties, and that's something you could ask about. I mean, if you want, that's going to be standard for any job. So again, you really want to read through these responsibilities because one, they could present red flags and things you don't want to actually do. And that's your cue to maybe put it on the back burner or move on. It also has the opportunity to lead to questions you can ask in your interview, like number 9 here, evaluating student progress in math, utilizing school-wide rubrics. I'd probably ask, what kind of school-wide rubrics do you use? And kind of stuff like that. Job requirements, you do want to check that out. So this is just saying that you need to have an active background check. So you are going to have to be fingerprinted. They'd prefer 2 years of prior relevant experience. So hopefully you've taught in another district for a couple of years. A bachelor degree preferred. That's interesting. I don't know how you'd be a licensed teacher without one of those. And citizenship, residency, or work visa. So you have to legally be able to work. All right. In School Spring, you do want to look at whether there are any application questions. Most jobs will not have them. Occasionally, some jobs will ask you to do like a short response or like a little essay. I'm really mixed on how I feel. In my opinion, I think it's kind of a red flag to me because it's asking you to do a good amount of work to draft a meaningful response to a question that they could ask you in an interview. And in my opinion, it's kind of biased because if you're not like the best long response writer, it could come off in a way that's really looking negatively to you. And I also think that it's a lot of work, in my opinion, that they're asking you to do relative to what other positions are asking to not even necessarily have a shot at being considered. I've had opportunities to interview for jobs where they've asked me to do a case study and a demo lesson on the same day, only to end up like ghosting me afterwards. And so it's like, respect my time enough to think about the candidate experience, so to speak. So there's that. Lastly, we've got the contact information. So we've got, this is who you're going to want to address your cover letter to. I obviously I switched the name of the people, so we're not going to see who it really is. But when you would do your cover letter, you're going to want to make sure you put this person's name in the cover letter. And then if you want to contact them further, I usually don't, but they put that information there. All right, so that is kind of a detailed breakdown of what you're going to want to look for in a teacher job posting. Now let's go ahead and do the second step. So you've got the posting. You're like, all right, I think this is a decent job. I want to get to know a little bit more. All right, so we're at the handbook now, and we're going to look at basically their most recent handbook I was able to find. This is I literally Googled the school name handbook, and here I am at the handbook. Here's like the mission statement. So they want to challenge ourselves, aspire to excellence, be resilient, engage with others. We've got some academic expectations. So these are things that you want to see. Does this align with your personal philosophies of teaching? Do you think this is appropriate for kids? And is this something you want to get on board with? If it is, this is something I think you want to print out or somehow write down, because you're going to want to, if you're serious about this job, you're going to want to tie your interview responses back to kind of the school's core beliefs. It's going to show that you've done your research, and it's going to show that you're serious about the job search. Okay, so just really briefly, things to think about: school mission statement. Take a second if you have it and actually read that student handbook, because you're going to glean a lot of information off of it. Again, to protect the anonymity of the school here, I'm not going to dig deeper into it. Other things to look for: what are expectations around attendance? What's the policy if students are tardy? If they're repeatedly absent, is there such things as absence failures for being absent too much? What's the policy on things like detention? Are the teachers allowed to assign after school detentions? What are the principals assigned for detentions? Are there Saturday detentions? What's the policy around plagiarism? What happens when a student plagiarizes? What happens when a student disagrees or a parent disagrees? Is there a chain of command that they're expected to follow? All things you want to think about here as you view the handbook. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at the teacher contract. So let's go ahead and jump into that now. All right, here we are at the teacher contract. So what you're going to want to think about is you're going to want to make sure that you Google the name of the school, teacher contract. You can go to the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They do have on their website a page, as you can see here, where it lists all of the most recent contracts. Most districts will have a very highly accessible one. For this district, it turned out I actually couldn't find it just by Googling. I found an outdated one. You'll want to look on the very first page because the page will tell you when the contract starts and ends. If you don't see the most recent one, you might want to check out this DESI page. All right. So again, I'm going to protect the anonymity of the job poster, and I'm going to start at the table of contents because the first page tells you the district's name. So I already did make a video about things to look for in a teacher contract. I'm going to now show you how I'm going to actively go about viewing this. So the first thing I would do is I'd scroll all the way to the end until you find, salary schedule. So there's going to be a salary grid for every single year that the contract is in effect. The first thing we're going to look at is the next year, September 1st, 2023 through August 31st, 2024. That's indicating that's going to be the next school year. Currently, we're in 2022, 2023. So this is the contract for 2023, 2024. Okay, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to find what you're going to realistically be paid. If you're coming right out of an educator prep program you've never taught before, in this district, you're getting paid $50,673. I have the mouse kind of aligned to it. Hopefully you can see that. But let's say you have been teaching for a few years. You've been teaching, you're going to be your 7th year of teaching, and you have a master's. You're going to be getting paid $72,487. So again, in my previous video on reviewing contracts, I've gone over what you want to look for. In my opinion, this is a fairly good pay structure. You can see that we have steps for every 15 credits. That's pretty generous. Not the most generous, but I've seen definitely a lot less generous. You can also look at the top left, 5673, in my opinion. It's a bit low, but it depends on where the school is. And the cap is at 101,496. That's a doctor with 20 plus years. What I'm noticing is that, relatively speaking here, the pay increase is not huge as you get into the double digits of years, right? It starts, you're going up by a few thousand. Now you can see as we're getting to the 11, 12, 13, 17. Well, first of all, there's 4 steps, 4 years where you're locked in on the same step, and you're really only getting a 2% raise. So what that's telling me is, as I, put more years into this district, my concern would be that potentially I'm not getting, my pay increase isn't matching with inflation. So if prices in the economy go up by like 6-7% and you only get a 2% increase, then effectively you are actually losing money. So you do want to think about, especially if you're going to be changing districts, what is the effective amount of money that you're going to be getting in addition now that you're switching districts. Look, I've had situations where I've actually lost money as I go from district to district. I had my first year of teaching, I had a very well-paying district. I moved to one that didn't pay as well. All right, folks, next thing I'm going to look at is the sick leave time. So the sick leave time, it's going to tell me right here. It says all teachers are entitled to 15 sick days of pay leave annually, which shall be cumulative to a maximum of 180 days. So what that means is I'm allowed to bank up to 180 days. I can never have more than that. And I will be given 15 sick days per year. That is very standard. And then it says if I don't show up on the first day, so if I get hired like mid-year, I don't get the full 15. So if I get hired mid-year, I'm assuming I'm gonna get like 7 to 8 days. I can see that teachers are permitted to use their sick time in half-day increments. So that's good. If I leave a half day, I'll get knocked off for 0.5 instead of a full one. That's good. And I'll be told at the beginning of the year how many sick days I have. Pretty standard. B is very interesting. So in addition to the personal illness or injury of a teacher, sick leave may be utilized for the following purposes, meaning you're allowed to take a sick day one day when emergency illness or injury in the teacher's immediate family requires said teacher to make arrangements for necessary medical and nursing care. So if I have like a spouse or a child, I can use my one sick day for that and not have to worry. Again, it counts against your sick days, but I think they're saying it's a legitimate use of a day, and up to 5 days at any one time in the event of a serious or critical illness of a member of the immediate family of a teacher, provided that the teacher's presence or bedside attention is required. And if you have a good workplace and you're not like completely toxic and have a distrusting administrator, I don't think that people are going to ask, is it required or not? People tend to trust you. Then they're going to specify what immediate family means. So you can see spouse, life partner who resides within the teacher's household. That's good. That's pretty like, I like that language. Children, parents, parents-in-law, grandparents, grandchildren, and siblings. That's actually very, very good. You don't often see grandparents and parents-in-law necessarily, especially grandparents. You don't see them always being given the same amount of days as things like parents or spouses. So that's good to see. And siblings as well, of course, that's important. Sick leave bank. Now, many districts have a sick leave bank. You want to review this carefully. One thing you want to look at is, are you able to join it the first year of employment? So this one actually indicates you do. And here's how I know. This paragraph here, each newly hired employee shall be provided the non-participation form. So the fact that they're providing it for you tells you that you're allowed to opt in. And what that means is that's a good sign. So in my current position, you're not actually allowed to join the bank until your second year of employment. They don't allow first years to go into it. And I would, that's something you want to think about. All right, folks, now I'm going to take a look at the next thing. Other reasons to have leaves of absence. So we can see teachers will be given. So now you have to read carefully 2 personal days. Now, effective September 1st, 2009, so they obviously haven't updated their contract language in a while. They now have 3 days with the understanding that the teacher shall advise the building principal as to the reason for such leave for 2 of the 3 days. So what that means is you have 3 days of personal business that will allow you to miss school for any, reason that again requires the teacher's presence during the school day. So the teacher needs to take this day. There's nothing they can do about it. For 2 of those days, they have to explain why. And usually, again, you don't see principals often shooting it down, but for what it's worth. And 1 of the days you do not have to explain. I also like that you have religious observance days. This is actually very good, very unique to this district. You don't see this often. Up to 2 days of absence from school shall be granted to a teacher without loss of salary for the purpose of fulfilling a required obligation in accordance with the tenets of her faith. A 3rd day of said leave, if required, shall be deducted from the teacher's accumulated sick leave. So what that means, and that's really good, because that means that if you have a holiday, so like I might celebrate Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, typically in the past, I have had that count against either my personal days or my sick days. They're not going to have it count against either. I think that's actually very generous, very good, and I like that it applies to all religions. So it really allows people of all kind of faiths to take advantage of it. Of course, it says that it cannot be granted if the obligations can be fulfilled at a time when school is not in session. So Easter, school is not in session. You can't miss that day, right? It's not, you're already not going to be there. All right. Now, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, those tend to fall during the week. So if I'm going to go to temple during the day, I can't say, oh, I've got work. I know I have to go. I have to go. So that's good. We have bereavement leave. So they'll have 5 days. And they'll usually specify, so we can see 5 days of bereavement for more immediate family. And then you can see we have 2 days in the event of not as close family. And then they've got time for educational meetings. They'll let you take time for court appearances. And, you can see down there, they'll have jury duty as well. Those are all things we want to consider. So we have salary, personal days, sick days. There's one more thing we want to consider, and we'll go ahead and take a look at that. All right, last part we're going to want to take a look at is teaching duties. And this is going to lay out your responsibilities as a teacher, and any kind of preparatory time are going to be given. All right, so you can see 182 days is the school year length. You may be required to attend an additional day of orientation in addition to the number of days set forth in the contract. Okay. The rest of it's kind of boilerplate. Regular work day. So a couple things to think about. All teachers shall arrive at school 15 minutes before the start of the pupil's school day and shall remain 15 minutes after the school day is ended. So what that's indicating to me is that you're gonna, and that's not atypical. You need to arrive before the kids, but it's indicating the 15 minutes after means that there's some requirement that you're going to need to stay for some office hours after school. So teachers in 6 through 12 shall be required to work 7 hours daily and shall also be required to spend a minimum of 15 minutes per week after school per discipline for the purposes of assisting pupils with any problems which they may have relative to their courses of study. So you are required to stay 15 minutes after work, but it looks like you're only required to have 15 minutes devoted to actually assisting pupils with problems. But again, nothing's to stop you from doing that every day because it appears that you're going to have to stay after anyway. All right, now we're going to take a look at the teaching load, and notice right above there, number 11, this is interesting. The district shall schedule an early release day for the students and teachers on the last day before the December holiday break each year. So basically the day before winter break is a half day. Interesting. All right, teaching load. Each teacher of grades 6 through 12 may be assigned a maximum of 25 teaching periods per week as designated by the principal. So typically what this is going to tell you to do, and I'm not going to show this, but the next thing you're going to want to do when you see this is you're going to want to look at the bell schedule for the school. The bell schedule tells you what periods meet every day, when the school day starts and when the school day ends. So that means essentially you're going to teach 5 classes. No teacher of grades 12 shall ordinarily be required to teach more than 2 subjects or more than 3 preparations within each of any individual subjects, provided that depending upon the nature of the curriculum, such teacher may be required to teach more than 2 subjects or more than 3 preparations within any such subjects, and provided further that if the number of single subject sections within a curriculum area commonly known as singletons requires that 1 or more teachers in the department teach more than 3 preparations, then such preparations shall be assigned to teachers on a rotating basis. The committee shall be required to demonstrate the necessity for any of such teaching requirements which deviate from the ordinary rule. All right, so what does that mean? That means that you are not going to, I'm a math teacher, I have 5 classes. I'm not going to have more than 3 different classes, most likely, or I'm going to assume, I think that's what they mean. So subjects, I think, means math, English, science, history, etc. So that means like I could teach algebra, geometry, algebra 2. That is heavy. I'm not supposed to teach. So then my other 2 classes are going to be maybe another algebra and another algebra 2. So I have 2 algebra 2s, 2 algebra 1s, and a geometry, right? And that's important because the more different classes I have, the more stretched that I'm going to be. Ideally, you want to only have 1 preparation because then that means you can spend more time honed in on that. However, shall ordinarily be required to teach. You can see that wording is being a little bit watered down. And to me, in my personal opinion, they are leaving some space for there to be some wiggle room to get out of that requirement. Even if the committee shall be required to demonstrate the necessity of breaking the rules or deviating from the rules, it's not really as strong of language as you think. And so, it is something to consider. Um, so again, it's unlikely, but I would consider that. Now going down to the duty-free time. So teachers of grades 6 through 12 shall be entitled to one preparation period per day. So that means that you shall be entitled. So that's much stronger language. That means that you are guaranteed every single workday that you will have a preparation period, a period where you do not have a class to teach. This school, I believe, might have a duty. Again, as I said earlier, that could be monitoring a hallway, monitoring outside the bathroom, etc. But it's guaranteed that you're going to have a duty. So potentially there's a rotating schedule. I mean, a prep. So potentially there's a rotating schedule. And if your prep is dropped, your duty becomes a prep period. That's how it works at where I teach right now. So that's good. Interesting though, a teacher of grades 6 through 12 without professional status, which means in their first 3 years of consecutive teaching in that district, may be required to spend a part of preparation period in a meeting or conference with another staff member during said preparation time, provided that in no event shall the teacher be deprived of preparation time of at least 15 minutes on such occasion. So maybe that's like a mentor meeting. I'm not sure, but I think it's really odd that it's delineated such that if you are not professional status, you might have to attend that meeting, and that's part of the contract. But if you have that professional status, then you're not. That doesn't really make sense to me. But and then they clarify that a preparation period shall be defined as a period equal in length to a class period, which a teacher uses in his own professional judgment for the purpose of planning and preparation. The teacher can leave the school building for an educational purpose. And then we can see that each teacher shall have a duty-free lunch of 25 minutes, and they are permitted to leave the building, and they don't have to explain why. Okay, so that's good as well. All right. So at this point, what you're going to want to have to do is you're going to want to review some of these things, and you're going to want to ask yourself, do I like the requirements of this job? Am I okay with what I need to do? Am I okay with the responsibilities? Do I agree with the school philosophy? Do I agree with the contract stipulations? If yes, I think that's a sign you want to apply. But the idea is that you really want to vet a lot of these things in detail before you spend your time digging into this job, because these are the kinds of things that you're going to be kind of hit with out of the blue once you've accepted a job, and now it's not going to really be feasible or practical for you to go switching to some kind of other arrangements. Hey folks, so I really hope you enjoyed this video, kind of me breaking down the process that I would go through in determining whether I would want to apply for a job. Again, there's a lot of things you want to look for when you're applying as a teacher for a new job, or if you're an up and coming teacher. But I want to make you aware of these things based on my experience over the past few years working in Massachusetts schools. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure, of course, there's things that I missed, so please feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below so we can keep the conversation going. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.